That's the quote of the day. Cronyism kills capitalism.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Dead Presidents Club, where we talk unfiltered and unashamedly about all things money. Money is just a game, so we want you to learn the rules so that you can be an unrivaled master of the game. And today we have what I believe is an unrivaled master of the game, Joshua Johnson, with us today. Welcome, Joshua. Thank you for joining us. Josh is a entrepreneur, a real estate and property developer, an investor, a tech mogul, former city council candidate, father, husband, friend. What haven't you done, Joshua?
Oh, there's plenty I haven't done.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but this is going to be a fun conversation. Josh has had his hands in just about everything, and can probably tell you that there's still more to get his hands into. But Josh, welcome to the show. Thank you for doing this with us, and appreciate it. Would love to kick off. I don't think I did you enough justice with all of your titles. Tell us a little bit about the Joshua Johnson story.
Well, I mean, long time ago, I thought I would actually be a pastor of a church.
Oh, okay.
And went to college, went to Oral Roberts University, first semester, started theology, training, and went into some of those classes and realized that wasn't me. As much as I loved my faith, loved my God, wanted to, serve and do those kinds of things, I felt something inside of me that was like, no, I want to do something else in this world. So entrepreneurship and those kinds of things started to, be early seeds at that time. And then, but really what took off then was government, my love for politics and government.
Yeah.
I think what I loved about that was just the people, the ground root, the ground floor, grassroots kind of campaigning. I joined some campaigns. Gubernatorial, Senate, congressional campaigns. We won some tight elections.
What were you doing for those campaigns?
Just canvassing.
Okay.
So we traveled to Colorado, did some 96-hour final stretch kind of pushes for some candidates that were behind in the polls, and they ended up winning.
Holy smokes.
I think I caught the bug because of that. It was so fun, and with 200 other students, just out in Boulder and enjoying it. And it was so fun. And I think also just tasting democracy, tasting the democratic process, and it just got me excited. So I changed my degree to government.
Okay.
And a business minor. And then after university, I started a software company. And so I kind of felt like, the DC thing was open for me to, kind of, climb that ladder, and it just wasn't appealing in that way. So I thought, hey, if I ever get back in government, it's going to be after I've lived some life and had some experience in real world kind of thing. Yeah. And so I decided to go after kind of the next thing was in my heart, which was to build a business. Okay. Real estate is also always in the background of that, but tech was so prevalent in the time. It was just, bubbling up.
What year did you start your company?
2007. So it was post the bubble, the startup bubble of 2001. So it was after that. So people took their licks, and then they were thinking about tech a little bit differently at that time. Sure. And if you were outside of San Francisco, you were dipping your toe back in. Yeah. Right? Yeah, I don't know if I want this, but I kind of like it.
It's like real estate investors in 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like,
I don't know. Everything's going to give me cancer.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
So, but I started getting into Photoshop, and I really love design, user experience. I saw kind of, really crappy experiences online and on the internet. I was like, I can design that. And so I started playing around with the tools and became a designer. Okay. Self-taught, and ended up needing to partner with a coder, and found my business partner working at Starbucks together. Okay. And there's a lot of overqualified people in coffee, which is,
I honestly know that because I'm from Seattle originally. Yeah. So I very much know the overqualified people from Starbucks. Yeah. The real question though is, do you know what an undertow is?
An undertow.
Do you know what an undertow is? See, this tells me you didn't work at real Starbucks, which is in Seattle, right?
Okay.
You know,
All right.
I know.
All
I
right.
know.
Here we go.
An undertow is essentially a doppio, but it's 2 shots of espresso. So it's a 1 pump of whatever syrup you want, an inch of milk or cream,
Okay.
and then 2 shots of espresso poured over the back of a spoon. So it layers.
Okay.
So you've got sweet, bitter, hot, cold. It's a Seattle thing.
Yeah.
And
I would never drink something with the word toe in it. So
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
just gross.
Well, and I would never order coffee from you because you didn't work in Seattle.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I digress.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So met my business partner there. We started coding, started building stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And at the time we launched our business, I mean, iPhones were just started, becoming a thing. So 2008.
Yep.
And then on, built a company in Cincinnati called Mindbox, and that was a lot of fun. It was working with startups, working with large companies as well. Did a little bit of mom and pops, but mostly stayed in the tech innovation side of things. Whether it was a big company like NBC Sports or Walmart partnering, there was PG&E or not PG&E, but Procter and Gamble.
Oh wow!
And
so you're working with some big brands.
Yeah, and usually on kind of their tech innovation side. So when they were trying to press the envelope with technology, user experience, those kinds of things, then we would do that. But then also a lot of startups, so venture backed or seed funded startups that needed to get their minimum viable product out the door. We were designing that for them, helping them get to the next round of funding or customer validation.
So that makes tons of sense to me because you also innovated here in Reading the startup games, right? That was your baby.
Well, I experienced Startup Weekend in other cities before moving here. And when we moved here, we were like, hey, this is what we need to do here.
Yeah.
We need to do Startup Weekend, which turned into Startup Games.
Okay.
So it wasn't my thing. That was a Kauffman Foundation event.
Okay.
Which is a big entrepreneurship, foundation. So Kauffman partnered up with a group out of Colorado, started Startup Weekend. It became this huge global phenomenon.
Okay.
You basically build a business in 54 hours, and then you pitch in front of investors kind of Shark Tank style. And it's a ton of fun. Probably it's something I recommend everybody do, even if you're not an entrepreneur. It'll make you a better employee. It'll make you a better professional. Yeah. It'll make you a better communicator. It'll make you a team player. There's so many things you learn in 54 hours because of the intensity and the time crunch and all the different things. So it was a lot of fun. We brought that here to Reading, and I was really surprised. I feel like it's thrived here and had more of an impact in Reading than it did in the other cities that I had experienced it in.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, it makes sense because you've got all this experience working with startups, right? And so you got bit by that bug too.
Yeah,
and that's awesome. Yeah, Startup Reading is a huge network now.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited. I think I'm going to get to participate next year. So,
good.
Yeah,
that's
I'm excited
awesome.
about that.
Oh, it's fun. Take your kids. I mean, I've had my 9-year-old, a 13-year-old in there. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it blows. They get excited about the idea of, kind of thinking of an idea, and then that other people kind of resonate with that idea, vote for it, and then they build a team around it. You're like, I'm literally building this idea this weekend. Like, yeah, like you're doing that. Now at our startup games, we kind of they started with the Economic Development Corporation, who now runs it, giving a lot more value to actual. Getting to revenue over the weekend, which wasn't something we did.
Oh, interesting.
Or that the traditional Startup Weekend really puts into their
So
criteria.
getting to revenue, meaning they actually sell the product?
Yeah.
Over the weekend, pre-sales?
Or actual real revenue, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So I think it'll lend itself to different types of products that will, or ideas. Which is really cool.
Yeah, and the start. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Reading is a pretty small community. I mean, I think we're population just over 90,000. Shasta County is like 170,000.
Right.
And what Startup Weekend has done has really inspired kind of an entrepreneurial wave in our county. And we've had even some bigger tech exits that have come through Reading that have been a part of that community. And so, gosh, you're like I just put this together, but you're like the grandfather of startups in Reading.
Well, I would say that I came on. They had already had a little. The bedrock was here.
Okay.
They did a lot of work.
You like how I chose
2015.
grandfather and not father, though?
Yeah,
I did that on purpose.
I'm just turning 40 next month, so.
Oh, hey, happy birthday!
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Well, I'm only 35, so
Okay.
you can be the grandpa.
All right, awesome. But they they had started something before I got here, and did a lot of work, and then I joined up with them, became entrepreneur in residence with a friend of mine at the EDC, and I feel like it was just a perfect pairing of leadership at the right time. So it wasn't just me; there were definitely some other folks. I hope that you have on the show eventually. Some of those people.
I'm sure I will, and if I don't know them yet, I'm sure you can help me know them. So
you know them.
Okay, good.
Yes,
good.
They're incredible. But there was a lot of work, and it was a joint effort. And then from there, what I've been amazed by is just how the community has latched on and not let it die.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, things die, things ebb, they flow. You don't know how long somebody's going to last. But I've been amazed to see Startup Reading and
it's speared off into a couple of things like VentureCon. Was that what that's called, or is that what it was?
Venture Conference. Yep.
Yep. I went to that last year. That was amazing, and I think they gave out wasn't it like $10,000 or something that they gave out?
Yeah, they give out money every year. The Angels also invest in companies. We have Shasta Angels, which and sometimes they sidecar invest with other groups out of the Bay or Oregon and things like that. So I think that's a thing that's really unique about as work is changing, the way we work, the way we network, the way we build businesses. I mean, micro urban communities are going to be able to have more entrepreneurial ventures. Grow and thrive there because it's not going to have to be in like a San Francisco anymore.
Yeah.
And our proximity in San Francisco is so unique that we're 4 hours away. But I mean, our lifestyle and our cost of living is ridiculously cheaper.
I know.
So
don't tell anybody in San Francisco.
I know, right? Shh.
Okay, so I got us on a tangent. So you started this company. You're working with venture startups, but you're also working with big brands. Mm-hmm. You build this tech company. Yeah. Then what happens?
Then, I've been doing that for probably about a decade at the time when I started realizing, I really want to. I've always had this background. It's kind of just in the background of real estate. But the question of what kind of real estate? So I, during the 07, 08, I bought 2 foreclosures in Cincinnati.
Lucky
flips that were $32,000 each. And they were 5-bedroom, over 2,000 square feet.
I hate you so much. I also bought my first home in 2007, but it was before the foreclosures.
Yeah. Well, these guys, these were literal crack houses. We had former customers come up to the door as we were renovating them, things like that. It was rough. One was in a really good area. One was in not a good area. And I learned a lesson. The one that was not in a good area, we had to rent for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
We still made good money on it, but not quick. And then the other one that was in the good area, I ended up renovating it and moving in, and then sold it about 7 years to move to Reading.
Wow.
But
so what did you make on those deals?
So that one we did $32,000, put in about 60.
Okay. So you're into it 90.
Sold it for 180.
So you made $100,000. Yeah. Well, minus fees or whatever.
Yeah. Plus I got tax abatement because I applied for a community reinvestment fund, which was after the 08 crash. Most communities had, in certain areas, if you had a certain, California didn't do it because they have a centralized property tax deal, but the counties in Ohio wanted to see reinvestment in the communities. They wanted to see these foreclosures not be abandoned forever. So they were incentivizing people to buy them, fix them up, and then there would be a tax frozen at their value of when you purchased it.
Oh, no way.
So I only paid property taxes on $32,000 for 10 years. And it stayed with the property. So when I sold it, the buyers got 3 more years of that.
Wow. It
was really fun because basically you had to go through permits. You had to follow all the rules. You had to do everything the right way and then keep all your receipts and all this stuff and then, hand that over. And they're like,
Yeah.
You get it.
Well,
and
and
it's
that
fun.
and that deal was specific to the 2008 crisis. But
Yeah.
what's always so surprising to people when I talk to them is how many incentives the government provides to people to be in real estate
Yeah.
and investing, right? Like the government actually rewards people like you and I for investing in real estate through tax benefits, through rebates, through programs. And so it's really interesting. Like that's a whole game in and of itself to learn how to leverage those programs and those systems. But
Well, I mean, it's the bedrock of our communities. If our housing just crumbles, then everything else falls. Businesses won't be there. They'll move out. So they're going to move to the areas where it's thriving. And housing is a big indicator. So if you have a neighborhood that's got a bunch of boarded up, you drive. In some of the bigger cities, we were in Cincinnati at the time. I mean, it would have been really rough. Over $1 billion was invested in Cincinnati, and after 10 years, the city of Cincinnati got to have the new tax rate on all the improved value. So they just had to defer their. They had to just defer their,
to get that investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and it's
Smart.
so smart. We can't do that in California. It's way too complicated here.
Sure.
But we also have the benefit of only having a 1% property tax here versus out there. It's
which
different.
also only scales, in proportion to your purchase price, not your long-term value, right? So like we bought our home for $300,000.
Right.
I'm paying property taxes on that value, not my $1 million value now.
Right.
So I mean, there's pros and cons. Everybody's terrified of California, and I just go like, there's pockets of California that are still extremely advantageous in that space, and we have a lot of affordable housing dollars for developers that are available, right? So I don't know if you've tapped into any of that, but
we're looking into. I mean, honestly, I think we're in the final chapters of being able to build market rate multifamily in California. I don't see how anyone's going to be able to do it much longer. I mean, in Redding, I think we might have seen our last market rate multifamily without some subsidy or foundation involved, which we have a large foundation in Redding that helps kind of kick off a lot of projects that are needed to, for the community. But without government or some foundation or something, I just don't see average investors taking the risk for the squeeze.
yeah.
It's just not, the juice isn't there, and it's just really risky. But when you tap into, so California, like it or love it, or hate it.
There's a
like
third
it or
option.
love it or hate it.
Yeah.
You can do, California is moving to a place where they're wanting to control housing, and they have their reasons for doing that, politically. I'm not going to get into that right now.
Sure.
But if you're wanting to be a builder, you want to build multifamily, you want to develop housing, which we do have a housing crisis, I would say. We need more housing. You kind of need to tap into those programs. So there's a lot of different programs out there on housing dollars. Those are our tax dollars. Yep. So yours and my tax dollars are going to the state. They're coming back to the communities in the form of these tax credit development projects, various affordable housing dollars that go to the city. They don't have a redevelopment agency anymore in cities due to some proposition changes about 10 years ago or so. But they do have dollars for various affordable housing tiers and things like that. And on an annual basis, almost every 6 months, those funds get changed and replenished. And right now, a lot of those in Redding are being used in our downtown core. But coming up, there's going to be some more available dollars. So,
you kind of have to know how to play that game, right? Because like we have a big developer in town that kind of wipes those funds out pretty quickly generally, right?
Yeah.
So you got to know how to position yourself even in that, because you've got these bigger development groups that know the game and know how to do that. Totally. They take advantage of those dollars pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job of it.
Of course, yeah.
And honestly, before them, not a lot of other people were doing that at that level. I think though, that as time goes on, there's going to be more needed in that world. And the question is, it's going to be about what cities are going to be looking for when they're investing those dollars, and the state is they're going to be looking at, size and the, how far can that $1 go?
Right.
How many units does it get them?
Well, and the interesting thing too is, so that's kind of the the negative side, right, is that it's just getting hard to do that, to get those numbers to pencil. The good side is that the municipalities and the cities are aware of this. And so they're getting more creative. We're looking at I want to talk to you about this deal offline, but we're looking at a development that got presented to me here in Reading, and it's the site map's approved for 161 townhomes. I'm sure you've seen it or know about it. And it got presented to me in a creative deal that I think we could actually probably make work, but it doesn't pencil in the development, right? Like when we run the numbers, it doesn't pencil. So the idea that me and another partner have been kicking around is seeing if we can get the city to approve a redesign of these 161 4-bedroom, 2-bath townhomes into 300 apartments. So we changing the zoning. And we're in the early stages of that, but the conversations with the city have been relatively positive. Yeah. Because in Reading, I think the number is like 5,000 houses were short, right? Like in the city. So they're very much open to the conversation on developing larger numbers of units, right? And so that obviously, moving 161.
Well, and you get a density bonus if you end up going affordable on that.
Oh yeah, right, exactly.
So, and then in order though to do the affordable housing, you'd have to get it rezoned before the application. So it needs to be already in place. But the city, if they really want that, which hopefully municipalities are catching on, like they need to run alongside guys like you and me,
right,
and others, big, small, and everywhere in between. We need housing, so they should be doing everything within their means that they can, I think, to make that possible. The downside, I had a friend text me and say that out in South Carolina, it was an over-the-counter development permit to subdivide a lot. I was like, what?
Yeah, I've got stories like I've got a friend in Tennessee that's doing a 200 acre subdivision, and like they like have over the counter permits. Yeah, it's just craziness. It's like Texas is that way. I've heard too. Like,
but when I go out there too and I look at the houses, the roofs are wavy.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we're building a good product,
a better product for sure.
It's definitely better. It's it's a freaking fortress,
Yeah, and it's energy efficient, which whether you believe in that or not is up for debate. But
I like it when I live in it.
I like it when I live in it too. Yeah, and so like we don't have, like in other states they don't have like Title 24 and Cal Green and all that type of stuff. So, the barrier to entry is high. But let's circle back because this is a lot of information, and there might be people listening to this going
this is kind of in the weeds.
Yeah, we just got super nerdy, and like Joshua and I are having fun, but you might not be. So you built the tech company, you get an itch for real estate, right? You've done some like kind of pseudo flips or burrs maybe, actually let's pause there. What's a burr? You know what a burr is?
Yeah. Buy, rehab, refinance, repeat.
Yeah. So it's just a strategy, right? Where like what Joshua just, kind of described, he bought a home for $32,000, put 40 or 60 into it, and then ultimately found that he had to rent it. I imagine you refinanced that property somewhere along the way.
Yeah. So we rented that one, but I ended up refinancing and living in the other one.
Right.
And that became our family, home for a while. And then we sold it before we moved to Reading. So I was talking about tax abatement and we applied for that. So looking for those programs, those are like little like icings on the cake. And I think that's what's fun about real estate. What I realized about that is I didn't love rehab.
Oh, okay. There you
I
go.
actually realized I didn't want to be a remodel flipper. I watched all the shows at that time. It was before Chip and Joanna and all that kind of stuff. But I watched all the shows and I was like, oh, that's fun. We can do that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's for somebody. That's for. But I really started like asking a question like, who designs our cities? At like a macro level, like who said the street goes here, the sidewalk goes there, that it's this far from the front porch, if you have a front porch, it's that are the zoning of like why are these neighborhoods more dense and why are these ones more rural feeling and more spread apart, we had these little like kind of suburban communities that had like kind of micro downtowns with a coffee shop and theater and like restaurants and stuff like that, and little retail mom and pops,
Who's designing that stuff?
Who said that all goes there and who approved that and how did it all get built? And so I started doing a lot of research and getting really nerdy, like researching the Garden City movement, which goes way back to the early 1900s, which inspired, guys that, ended up inspiring like the Epcot original vision for Epcot, which is the experimental prototype city of tomorrow, which Walt Disney wanted to build in Orlando. That got kiboshed and turned back into an amusement park because brother Roy Disney had more of a financial sense. And after Walt passed away, no one was carrying the vision the same way.
Sure.
So it became kind of what it is today. But the original vision of that was, Matt designing a perfect utopian city.
Yeah.
I've visited a lot of, master plan communities. I started studying them. I started seeing, I started learning what a developer was. Mm-hmm. The developer was the one who bought the raw land, worked with civil engineers and landscape architects and regular, building architects, and came up with a master plan.
Right.
Or here in California, a plan unit development, a master plan. There's so many different ways.
Yeah, essentially the design of what this land is going to become. Right. It's the question you were asking: where are the roads? Where are the houses? Where are the stuff? Right.
Which is way different type of real estate, profession or skill set than being a builder.
For sure.
And what I found out is builders didn't know much about what developers did. And developers sometimes knew what builders did because sometimes they were the one and the same. They ended up building and developing. Mm-hmm. As I was doing that, I saw a lot of places. They were, a lot of master plan communities were in wealthier areas where they were pretty homogenous. Everyone mm-hmm. had pretty much the same amount of income, and types of jobs and different things. Sure. And others were really nicely mixed. And I thought that was really interesting, and I started being inspired by that and people that kind of have a lot deeper plan. And then you saw some people just kind of, build, suburban neighborhoods that were just like mm-hmm. all the same house. The garages were out front. The front doors were set back. Everyone parked in the garage and shut the door and don't talk to your neighbors.
Yeah.
And those were kind of disgusting to me. And I started being really attracted to communities that really brought people together, where the neighbors, there was the design of community mm-hmm. into the feel of the neighborhood. Yeah. And I felt like that is what we were going to need as I went from tech to real estate. I felt like we didn't need more homes that isolated us further. We needed new communities being built that actually brought humans back together.
Wow.
Because we are already figuring out how to do stuff without other people.
Sure.
So
this is so interesting because you've got these very different passion projects, mm-hmm. or passion categories, right? And it's mm-hmm. like one led to another. Mm-hmm. So you sold the tech company. Mm-hmm. And then did you immediately, because where we're getting to is that you did your first development here in Redding, California, which is actually what brought you here, right? Yeah. Was the ability to develop here.
Yeah.
Did you sell the company with the intention to come and do a development, or like how? What was that transition?
There is a bit of overlap. I came to Redding still with the software company, but in my mind, I knew that I was probably on my way out.
Okay.
So either I was going to phase out and stay on the board, which actually is what I did. But then eventually we sold the company.
Okay.
So
you get your exit. Mm-hmm. That, I assume, set you up a little bit for moving into a different kind of venture, which in this case was development, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what was the process? You came to Redding. You knew, I assume you were targeting Redding because it was cheaper to get into the game here.
Yeah, and I'm from California originally. We visited out here. This is kind of the Midwest of California.
Yep.
Both cost-wise, but just the lifestyle was very similar. Beautiful with the mountains. I hadn't seen mountains in so long, and our family fell in love with it. The people, just everything, just kind of felt like it was a great fit for us, and it was the right kind of vibe, But still being close and being back out west was probably, being originally from California was kind of something I was hoping for at some point. I just didn't know when. It happened sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
My kids were 6 months old up to 9 years old.
How many kids do you have again?
4 daughters.
4 daughters.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've been here now 8 years.
Okay.
And a lot of our kids, they don't even remember Ohio. The 2 older ones do, but I think that there was a bit of overlap where I needed the income from the software company to help me.
Sure.
Kind of start transitioning to this. So it wasn't like this clean break sale. I've got this nest egg. Now we go to, actually the way it worked is I kind of got paid, and we continued that for like 5 years before I actually was fully out of the software world. It takes a lot longer to do everything that I thought I was going to do in California.
Of course.
Because I was getting kind of mentored by some people in Ohio, and timelines are very different. Timelines are very different, and costs.
Yes.
So learned a lot of hard lessons there, and everything has taken triple the time, triple the cost. But there's also we've seen also just land values appreciate at different levels, and the demand has, Reading has experienced since COVID, just even the demand and people moving in here, it has helped.
Sure.
Because Reading is kind of a secret that is being found out by some, to some people's chagrin, but
yes,
others in the real estate world, it helps us build a higher end product that, we can be able to play with. And Shiloh Park, my first development, is a little bit of that kind of higher end product. It's not custom home, but they're definitely better than your standard subdivision home.
Yeah, they're beautiful and they're creative. They've got an ADU element to them, and they're more kind of modern farmhouse, right?
Yeah.
And so that, which is not super common here.
Right.
So it's a unique product. And you've got how many lots in the division?
We have mapped 21. We developed phase 1, 13 lots. We have 8 on those. So we have 5 lots left.
Got it.
To build.
Yeah. So that's the intro to, and we could spend the rest of eternity talking about that process. But I'm curious to kind of go, so what else do you got your hands in? Because obviously that's, to your point, I mean, that's been what, 7 years in the making?
Yeah, I bought that land 6 years ago.
6 years.
Yeah.
So you've been 6 years in the making.
Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster, I'm sure. Ups and downs, lots to talk about there.
Probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
I can imagine. See, the fun fact that I don't know if you knew about me, it's funny that you were thinking that you were going to be a pastor. Yeah. I planted a church. So my wife and I were missionaries and pastors and gone business. Well, actually, we're business gone pastor back to business, because I realized I'm a better business person than I am a pastor. But it's funny because I always jokingly said that planting the church is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I don't know if that's entirely true. Living through 2008 in the financial world was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But
exactly, yeah.
Anyway, so you've got the subdivision. You're still riding that roller coaster, right? That's a never-ending deal, but it's a passion, and you love it, and that's awesome. But you've got other things happening, right? Because you've got your hands in all sorts of things. So what other types of projects are you working on?
Well, when I was waiting through some of the red tape with Shiloh Park when we were in the development in the early years, because it takes a while to go from raw land to tentative map might be like 3 years in California, basically, which is the process of you got to like, hey, I see this beautiful land, and to add lines, just a line in that land. In California, you go through environmental, you go through the planning process, you go through the mapping and the figuring out, and you get approval with your city council. I mean, that time frame right there, just to get it approved, about 3 years. That's just to get lines on a piece of paper.
And that ultimately, like, because you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're unusual, but you're not the majority of developers that really take raw land all the way through development. A lot of developers, that process you just talked about is the part of the process they capitalize on, right?
Well, and I bought Shiloh Park with a tentative map.
Oh, you did?
My
Okay.
second development, I did from start to finish, raw land. And so when I was waiting on, so there's 3 years there, we bought it. But then to go from tentative map to like building is probably another year to 2 years.
And that's getting all the underground, getting all the utilities.
Getting all your plans approved, getting to the place where you're timing the market where it's ready to pour a slab. Right? You're like going. So you got 5 years there. Just, and that's like if everything's going pretty good. Yeah. So while I was kind of waiting, we were going through some red tape, going through some issues early on in the development, which is just hard and kind of par for the course. I happened to get a lot of like this. I haven't experienced since then, but we had a lot of really crazy things happen early on in Shiloh Park that delayed us. But then I ended up working with a buddy, and we bought some land across from a brewery restaurant that was just a vacant land, and I mapped that while I was feeling pretty bad about, my abilities in real estate at the time.
So let me get this straight. You're feeling a bit like a failure.
Yes.
And your response is to go buy another piece of land. Just so we're clear.
Yeah.
These are the types of people we are. Like, if you're listening to this, you're listening to this because you're a crazy person.
Yes.
Like, that's literally, we are all wired this way. Like, our response to failure is run further into the fire.
Yeah. And I saw this, I got this, literal vision of what would go in that land.
Is that here?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I knew about that one.
Yeah. So across from Woody's on Oregon Street there.
Oh, that's yours.
3-story development. I did that while I was waiting on.
I didn't know that was yours.
Yep.
My brother-in-law's been working on that.
Cool.
Kyle.
Kyle.
So he works for Pete,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Is it Pete that's subbing for another guy?
Yeah. Cool. So he worked on the front building then.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there are 2 buildings. We mapped that, got basically 4 townhouses out of it in 2 buildings. They each have an ADU on the bottom, like a junior ADU, courtyard, rooftop decks.
Yeah, they're very cool.
I saw this, and then I was, I was like, we got to do this.
Yeah.
And so that one went so much faster.
Yeah,
I went from raw land to map to underground and fully done, in like a year and a half.
It's crazy.
So to have the like those 2 things were just so.
What was the difference, though? I have a theory on what the difference was.
Well,
but
size is one of them.
Certainly.
Right.
But practical differences, like besides size.
Well, okay, I'll give another one. You can give me your practical. Another one was that the city was hot on redeveloping downtown.
Okay.
So them coming alongside me was big. They were about to do an overlay with the new downtown specific plan, and I was the first, like, I don't know what you would say, which is they were kind of like, oh, this is the poster child for like market rate downtown, because they knew that some of the affordable housing projects were coming down the pipe, but I was the first kind of market rate thing to do within that new specific plan.
I would imagine too, a big part of that though was the relationships you had built with the city going through Shiloh Park, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's got to be, because you develop credibility, you develop connections,
you do build momentum.
You absolutely do. So, not only the practical learnings of what to do and not to do, the size, but then you also know who to pick up the phone and call, and they recognize your voice. Like, I remember the first time we had a permit problem on one of our first projects in Reading, and like it took me like a week just to get them to call me back.
Right.
And so now it's like I've got the cell phone number of the guy who's in charge of all of it. So
Totally.
those things are part of the learning process as well.
Yeah, and I've been in escrow for a year on a RV storage development.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah, a bit, and that is just we've been in escrow just waiting to get a permit.
So that was part of your contingency.
Yeah.
Okay, smart.
I'll close when I get a permit. The sellers have been really great. We've got a really great relationship with the sellers. I know them. It was off market. They've been amazing. But I've been going with them to the county and to work on this. But without us being able to actually start moving dirt, it didn't make sense for us to hold it.
Right.
They're already holding it at such a low basis, doesn't cost them anything. So it kind of made sense to structure it that way.
Yeah. So you've got multiple developments. You've got this new development, which is going to be, storage and RV parks, which I think is a whole nother segment. Everybody always talks, like I get questions like, I want to get into the self-storage business. Truth is, I don't know anything about it. Like I get deals presented. I had one presented to me a couple of weeks ago out in, was it Shasta Lake City or something? And I was like, maybe it's a good deal. I don't know. So, I'd be curious to talk about that, but you've really pivoted fully into the real estate game. Like that is your business.
That's my world. Yeah.
That's your business.
So basically I'm a licensed realtor. We have a construction company and.
Oh, you do? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So Emmaus Development. And then we have, our GP, basically the general partner on our development projects. So that's kind of more the development arm of doing the underground work and kind of managing those projects. So, yeah, it's something that's kind of been developing, you kind of learning. And I think that in Reading, we don't have the land values to support just doing development. So a lot of developers are builders,
right,
up here. So it's not like in Orange County, you
Right.
know, you got someone to buy the land, buy the orange grove,
Yeah.
you know, develop the
Yeah.
whole thing, do the map, and then sell it to a builder.
Right,
You know,
right.
Here we got to do it all.
So let's talk nitty gritty on some of this stuff, because I love this, and we can get into like the process all day. I'd love to talk about, so like one of the questions that comes up all the time on the real estate side when people are talking to me is it's like, okay, cool, I get it. Like I want to get into these deals, I want to get into them right. I understand the futures, I understand the ROI. Maybe people are listening to this going like, I don't know if I'm going to get into development because like that sounds like a little complicated. Although if you're aching for pain, like you'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk deal sourcing, because you mentioned like even the one you've got in contract right now, you know, it's off market deal. I would say, you know, of the 15 deals,
Shiloh Park was off market.
Shiloh Park's off market. I'd say of the 15 or 16 I've done in the last year, all but like maybe one or two have been off market. Where do we source deals? So like, let's talk about deal sourcing for like the average guy, like not the guy who's got a company built to market and like that whole thing, which is a whole nother discussion. But like, where are you sourcing these deals? How is this like, where are they coming from?
You know, I noticed the most successful people sourcing off market deals are those who live and breathe their passion and their story of why they're in real estate, and it's a believable story. People want to bring you deals. You're going to eventually, if you're consistent enough, you may not get really good deals your first year, you may not get really good deals your second year, but by your third year, people are gonna know you're the real deal. So you might need to do something on market to get started, like that's like MLS. So it's not as great of a deal, right?
Sure.
Because by the time it hits like the MLS, it means other guys have passed on it.
Right. Yeah, literally.
You know, so
yeah, if you don't know what the MLS is, just the public real estate market, right? When it's actually listed by a real estate agent. By the time it's gotten there, there's a pretty good chance that it's already been passed over by an investor or somebody who's got a back office relationship with a realtor or whoever. So
or the landowner beforehand or whatever, right? Because that most landowners or people are building owners are probably trying to sell to the highest, you know, price they can get for the lowest amount of headache, you know, usually. And so they're sourcing it through their friends and other realtors. And every landowner or building owner and real estate investor knows about 15 realtors.
Right.
And then, you know, they're pocket listing the thing or they're tossing it around, and you're going to hear it over, you know, a party or a get together, a Super Bowl party, whatever. It's like, oh yeah, that one deal and and deals are made at those times.
So just for the sake of the listener, what's a pocket listing?
So a pocket listing might be a listing that's going to be coming on the market. It could also be one that's has a listing agent but is not MLS marketed or marketed through the multiple listing service, like through Zillow or Realtor.com.
So secret deals kept in the pocket of the realtor.
That's right.
I like it.
And there's pros and cons to all of that. You can make a case to say, well, by it not being live and marketed publicly on the MLS, that the seller might be selling themselves short. It just depends on the goal of the seller, right? And not everyone actually wants to receive all offers from all people, because they might not have a high trust for those offers.
Sure.
They might have a high trust from an offer that comes through a friend.
Right. Well, and you're talking too, because people, you know, you might be listening to this and be thinking like, okay, how does this all play out? Well, you're talking really more on the larger scale, land deals, multifamily, commercial, like those bigger projects. That's a whole different sourcing game and offer game than a single family or a duplex, right?
Yeah.
And so so this is an interesting question. Like I do a lot of single family, right? And you know, I do the fix and flip thing, and we do some multifamily. But I don't pay, unless it's a creative finance deal, like I'm doing some more creative stuff with like sub 2 and seller financing and some different stuff. But if I'm buying cash, like a typical investor deal, I'm not paying, you know, I'm paying no more than 70% of fair market value less the renovations. Pretty quick and dirty, common investor math. Everybody on social media is blowing me up right now saying that's impossible. I refer you back to the last 10 deals where we paid between 50 and 70% of market value. But that's single family or small multifamily, like up to 4 units. What's the math like on a deal in the land commercial space?
Yeah. So usually on the, a lot of the deals that I'm doing in land and commercial, you're going to have a lot of seller financing, really tricky stuff. You have people that have a low basis, which means they bought the property like $1 million property. They bought it, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago for $300,000. They paid it off. So literally their basis was 300 grand. They have a $700,000 tax now or income that's taxable income or capital gains. So they're going to want really like creative ways to exit. And that's one of the reasons why owners stay in properties longer, is because they don't know how to do that. And they don't think anyone would want to do that.
Yep.
If you have cash buyers, you have people that actually are real investors, they actually love those deals.
Yeah.
You have the seller takes the first deed of trust. You put 20, 30, 40% down. So they got to tax that percentage. You can spread that over 5 years. So it takes their tax hit and it gives them 200 grand a year. That's taxable. And then they have a balloon payment for refinance. So then that buyer refinances in 5 years. And they got really cheap financing that first 5 years. I mean, usually it's a lower interest rate, no points, all the things, and it allows someone to get into it. And a lot of times those just happen off market.
And I think it's important because you just said about 17 terms that are like natural to you and me.
Right.
But if you're getting into real estate, you're listening to this going like, holy crap, like how am I? But what you really just described is creative finance, right? Yeah. And I think the beautiful part about it is like, you don't have to go alone in that space, right? There's a lot of people that it's like, if you can get good at finding the opportunities, you can get with a Joshua or a Michael, and we would help you structure that deal.
5 years ago, I didn't know these terms.
Exactly.
6 years ago, you can learn. It just depends. Are you a sponge, or do you want to go out there acting like you know everything?
Right.
You got to go out there and be vulnerable and be willing to be wrong and test the waters, meet with smarter people. I mean, I learned all of this, like through real deals and through sitting with people and meeting with people, picking their brain, being willing to look stupid. Yeah. Which a lot of times what I found is people didn't make me feel stupid. When I asked questions, they wanted to tell me about it.
Of course, because they've been there, right? Like that's the beauty. I paid a bunch of money to get into a mastermind, a real estate investor mastermind this year. First time I've ever done that. I mean, I have some history of that.
I want to talk to you about that. I'm interested.
We should talk. But like what I found as I was kind of shopping these ones is like I wanted to know, like I wanted that balance of like feeling like the dumbest guy in the room, but not so dumb that it was unapproachable. Yeah. And like literally that's how I approached it.
Definitely like watch videos, learn the terminology first, if you want to feel less dumb. But when it comes down to the actual math, I mean, I found that I love spreadsheets now. I love commercial and land deals because it's less emotional. There's my own romance in a deal, and I have to put that aside, because you fall in love with aspects of a deal. Yeah. Everyone does. But you put that aside, you put that in the closet, and you get back to the spreadsheet. Yeah. And I love that world.
See, this is where you and I would probably be a little different. My wife, this is like the thing she likes the least about me, I think, is that I have zero emotional attachment to assets, like other than cash flow. Like I'm literally a whore for the cash flow. Like I do not. So it's for me, it's actually because you're passionate about the project. Like you fall in love with almost the art of it, right? Like you love the placement and the strategy and the creative. To me, it's like I start from the cash flow, which we all do. We all have to make sure that it pencils, but like it's not hard for me, even on my personal residence. Like this is my wife drives my wife crazy. I'm trying to move us every couple of years and just rolling that forward, and because I just don't have that same emotional attachment. My emotional attachment is to the spreadsheets, and if the spreadsheets look good, I'm a happy camper.
Totally. Well, and that's the balance I've had to grow, in even the things that I'm passionate about. Not every project's that way. Sure. At the end of the day, you pivot. You have to make pivots. You have to sacrifice. I tell people I got about 70-80% of what I wanted in Shiloh Park. Yep. You pivot. You have to make sacrifice. You have to lay things you want because it doesn't make sense financially. So and finances have to rule.
Yeah, and I look at that like a checklist. Like if my buy box has 5 items on it, if I can check 2 or 3 even out of the 5, I'm probably going to move forward on the deal. Right? Yeah. It's that 70-80% rule. Like you're never going to get 100% unicorn deal.
Right. And I think also I always run it through a filter of it's really difficult to do, but you have to know it within yourself. There's maximum profit and reasonable profit. And if you want a deal to be really special, and I think there is an element of legacy, there's an element of impact on the community, there's an element of like, hey, you don't need to reach every buyer. You need to reach a certain kind of buyer. So you need to know who your kind of buyer is. Yeah. And I think that was like I didn't sacrifice front porches at Shiloh Park. On House of Roses, I didn't sacrifice in the plans a rooftop deck. All right, so I've got these two things. These are important, but did I sacrifice other things? Yes,
For sure.
because they didn't make sense. So I had way more ideas than that, but there were a few things that were non-negotiable, and I think that's the thing everyone has to kind of do in a deal. And housing's different than like RV storage. RV storage, I don't have a lot of emotional. I always want that thing
Sure.
to make money. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. I could probably use a little bit more emotion in my life. All right, so talking about sourcing deals, like really, if I were to summarize that up, it's really the networking piece. It's to learn, not just networking to meet people, but learning to tell the story.
Yeah.
Right. I have a great example of this. I met with an agent 2 weeks ago and just started telling her about a story of a sub-2 deal, a creative finance deal that I got that's giving me $1,000 a month in cash flow. It's got $80,000 in equity in it, and it cost me $9,000 to close. And I told her this story, and she literally, it was like her circuits fried, like she didn't know it was possible. And she since then sent me like 5 or 6 deals that just didn't work on market.
Yeah.
And like 2 of them I've already gotten contract, and I'm paying her a referral fee.
Nice.
So she's winning, I'm winning,
Right.
and she just got inspired. All I did was tell the story, right? And that's where a lot of these deals come from. Like I'm at the point now where I spend money on marketing, direct to seller marketing, and doing but that's all new to me.
Yeah.
Like building the relationships and the connections and the long term, these conversations are going to be where a lot of those deals come from.
Yep.
All right, so that's deal sourcing. Let's talk about funding. So capital, right? We've got investors, we got private money, we got hard money, we got conventional, we got non-QM, we got DSCR. Like we've got all of these things. Like
So many acronyms.
So many acronyms. Like we could do a whole episode breaking down the acronyms. Actually, I'm doing a financial vocabulary series.
Good.
On the
I'm
social
still
media.
learning new vocabulary every week. It feels like
I know.
because there's new stuff, there's new things, and as you go deeper, you learn.
I just hired an acquisitions and dispositions manager for some of the wholesale stuff that we're getting into, and she keeps dropping, like she said dispo the other day, and I'm like, what the heck's a dispo? And so I'd literally talk to her about it.
Nice.
So anyways, we're always learning. You never arrive in this game. But let's talk capital, right? So again, you're talking like a kind of more land commercial guy versus more single family, small multifamily. So our capital processes are a little different. So let's talk Shiloh Park, right? Obviously, I mean, what's that I guess the first question is, what's that development cost? Like how much money did you have to raise?
Yeah, I mean, so we bought the land for $525,000.
Steal.
Yeah, for 8 acres. Had a tentative map, and then the development has been like 1.2, 1.3. And
that's just the land improvements, right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
Utilities, roads.
Yeah,
all that.
So, that one, you basically get equity to do your improvements usually. And we did a seller finance on the land, which then gave us what's called a per lot release as we go to build. So they have a deed of trust of the remaining principal divided by the number of lots. And then as we go to get our construction financing, which then they want to take a first deed because they want to have the land as collateral, we then pay off that pro rata share on that lot. So, just give you easy math. If we did $100,000 and we had $100,000 we owed the seller of the land on 10 lots, then there would be a $10,000 deed of trust on each lot. As we go to build the house, we give them $10,000. Title does the exchange, does a payoff demand, and then we put the new construction loan on top of that lot. So that's essentially what we did with that. So we did equity financing, and then we did private financing for the construction of our houses.
Got it. So you let me make sure I understand this. So you get essentially equity terms from the seller, right, in the form of a lien position on each individual lot. Then you go to a construction lender who's giving you the money to build the home. But in that build, you're paying off the seller's note on that lot. And then but the construction loan is not paying for the construction. You said you got other funding for the actual construction itself?
No. So just backing up. So we did equity financing. We did a down payment. So we put a down payment. So I had partners. I put in money, and about 7 other partners put in money to.
So you brought capital for the down.
And we had to raise capital for the improvements.
Got it.
The seller financed, believe it was 75 or 80%
Of the 500.
of the 500. And we basically put a per lot release on each of those lots at usually land deals are somewhere between 5 and 6% interest. And we structured it to give us time for the development for accrued interest rather than monthly payments.
Okay.
So we had it accrue interest over 3 years, did all that. So, and then you usually, if you need an extension, you can build in like, hey, with an additional 10% down, we'll do another 2 years. There's things like that. So what I love about land development and commercial is the Wild West. It's not as structured as residential. You can structure those deals. I mean, you don't want to overcomplicate it because then sellers might get spooked, and you also feel like maybe you're getting taken advantage of, or maybe you're missing something. So there are some standard practice kind of ways to structure these deals, but I love how if there is a goal of the seller and a goal of the buyer, there's a lot of times a way to find the crossroads.
Yeah, and so what I love about this and the crossover into the smaller single family, multifamily deals is the creativity piece. If you're not, so let's just break it down, right? You've got conventional terms, right? If you're buying land, you're buying commercial, you're buying residential, it's going to be a set down payment against, a set term, 30-year fixed, 20-year, whatever it is. And ultimately you're going to have to qualify based upon either your financials or the financials of the deal, right? That's the type of financing everybody understands.
Yeah.
But then you move into this other weird world of like unconventional financing, right? And there's the hard money guys, which hard money, if you don't know, is just essentially asset-based lending, right? They look at the deal, not necessarily your financials, and they'll do commercial and multifamily just as much as they'll do residential.
Usually you'll pay a higher interest rate, but not often points. Sometimes points, depends.
Yeah, it depends. It's just expensive. I mean, hard money you can kind of translate to expensive money that's necessary, right? If you're doing hard money, it's because there's a need for quick funding, and you're probably not planning to hold on to that money for very long, right? Then you move into like seller financing, private money, these creative deals. And what I love about it is what you just said. It's the Wild West. Because we're all used to going to the bank and applying for a mortgage and them telling us what the rules are, like sometimes it's hard for us to think outside of the box. But the truth is when you're dealing with private money, it's whatever I negotiate. If you want to lend me $100,000 on a deal, whatever we negotiate is the deal. I mean, I've heard guys that have done seller financing deals where they've got 0 payments for 5 years.
Well, and I didn't know how to do that first deal. I'd never done seller financing before. It was the guy I bought from was a real estate investor and also was a broker. And so he knew how to structure it, and I learned a lot. I'd heard about seller financing before, but I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know that you needed a promissory note, a deed of trust. So basically, it was really cool. My first seller finance deal was Shiloh Park, and the title company handled everything.
Yeah,
they did the note and deed all in one.
Yep.
It was pretty simple because we had a principal amount. We had a clause for the release. We had a clause for the balloon. We had a clause for the extension. We had a clause. It was really, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So then I got a taste for like, oh, we can negotiate all this in an LOI, which is what we did, pass back and forth, which is, to those who don't know, is a letter of intent, which is essentially the layman's terms of what you've agreed to.
Yeah.
Non-legalese.
Yeah. The stuff we did like behind the pickup truck on site, like we're going to put that in writing.
Yeah, and then that's the guardrail for the title company to draw up the promissory note and kind of know what you guys are agreeing to. And I didn't even have a realtor involved in that one.
Yeah.
We just went straight to title company and just did the deal.
Yep.
We handed over the down payment money, and then it all got recorded and it was done. I didn't realize I was like, oh, cool. So that was really neat to kind of see that. Well, since then there's other ways to do it.
Yep.
As a real estate broker, you can actually represent seller finance or seller finance addendums now with the California Association of Realtor forms. You can do it with a straight attorney. There's so many different ways,
Right.
which so creative financing is like, it doesn't scare me as much anymore. But back in the day, I was like, well, how do I do this?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's overwhelming because it feels it's like step one is just learning how to think creatively, and and then you start to figure that out, and then you're like, okay, crap, I just agreed to all these cool terms, and it makes sense, but like, how do I put the paperwork together?
Right.
And to your point, like I use a transaction coordinator who has an attorney, so like if it's not a real estate deal where I'm working with a realtor, it's basically between my TC and my title agent
Right.
that are handling all. Like I literally email them the terms of the deal, and they put it together for me, and I pay them $1,300.
Well, now think about all the deals that you've done, and you essentially have a lot of these legal documents now created that you can edit.
Yep.
You can have your attorney just go in and be like, hey, we've got this deal. It's going to be the same as the deal on Willis.
Yep.
But just change the terms of this, and it's just quicker. Now,
Yeah,
and you're building an asset bank of deal sheets.
And another argument for joining a mastermind, they provide me a lot of those documents actually in our document vault.
That's
because
cool.
There's 1,000 qualified real estate guys that are in this group that have been doing this for way longer than I have, and they've culminated these things in. So there's to your point, there's a million ways, and I think that the big takeaway from this is that the financing and the capital is not the problem in real estate. It's really not. If the capital is the problem, it's probably because you don't have a deal.
Yeah,
like that's really what it comes down to. You can figure these things out, and if you're overwhelmed by them, then just reach out to somebody who knows what they're doing. Offer them I just got one recently actually that I'm really excited about. I think I even texted you about it. It was a deal where I basically got offered 20% equity in a massive development in Tennessee to be the sponsor for a $6 million bridge loan. Now I don't have $6 million, but the offer was fine $6 million. And the cool part about that deal is that the risk to the bridge lender was actually super low because the only thing they needed that money for was the capital investor out of New York wanted us to prove that we could raise the money. And so it literally was a condition of funding their line of credit, $6 million.
So when did they get to release that $6 million back to
as soon as the capital lender funded the loan, we could pay back that initial.
That's ridiculous. How much did that $6 million lender get?
$580,000. Stupid, right?
All right. What was their security?
So the security was their security on the $6 million was the fact that it was literally sat in a contracted escrow.
Okay. So the security was a trust account with an attorney.
Basically, it wasn't a trust account, but it was through a third party, like a custodian.
Okay.
And they literally
bound by some licensor, like
some contract. They worked they worked that contract out. My guy with the guy out of New York, they figured that out.
Cool.
And so it literally sat in escrow, and the contract condition was that if they fund the loan, the first draw will pay them back. And if they don't fund the loan, this money will be refunded. So then the only question we had to answer was, well, what about my $500,000 fee? Like if you guys sit on this money for 6 months or 3 months and we don't get paid. So the partner in the development and I put up a couple of assets in our portfolio to guarantee them we were so confident in the funding of the capital that we put up other assets to essentially guarantee the funding of their deal.
So when you say put up other assets, you're meaning they're collateralizing.
They're cross collateral.
Did they actually record?
So we haven't closed. So we're still working, but they will actually record a blanket lien on, they call it cross collateralizing against, I think 4 or 5 different properties.
So that's security for your wife to not have to move for a little bit.
It's not my house.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not my house. I'm not that dumb.
Sorry, I was trying to help your wife out.
Yeah, I know you were. Yeah. She loves you, but I don't know. I could still move. No, I put it up on some other, we own some properties outright.
Okay,
and so
cool.
there was just some stuff.
So that's easy. And it's nice to have that kind of thing where you can use that as a tool to do these deals in and out.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that sounds like crazy. Like, oh my gosh, you had to raise $6 million. But literally I texted everybody who I know in this space, got 2 or 3 people to go, well, tell me more. And one conversation led to another conversation and we got it done.
That's
and so the bottom line is like, that's the finance piece of this. I didn't bring any capital to that. I brought a little collateral, but like, that's the trade-off on these types of deals.
When I started, and I didn't grow up around a lot of money. So when I started, I was just like, I didn't realize how much money was out there, and people who invest in real estate, and it's just about having the right deal. Like, you got to have a good deal or you're not going to be able to. So I think you're hitting it. There's plenty of money out there for good deals.
Yep.
I think being in the tech startup space, I realized how, I saw how hard it was for people to get a deal with, but those are very like blue sky values. There's nothing that you can collateralize. There's no security. Those investors that's a whole nother game and a whole nother world. Real estate, it's a finite resource.
Right.
So it's way different. I mean, there's still bad deals out there.
Sure.
And we've all probably tasted some of those, and then but most of the time, if you got a deal, you can find the money. Like you said, there's so much of it out there.
Well, hey, we're coming on the home stretch here. I'd like to ask a few more like kind of fun questions, and then we've got two things that we normally do on the front end that we jumped in so fast that I totally forgot about. So I want to ask a few fun questions. I also want to cover some questions from audience submissions. So let's start there, and you can weigh in and we can kind of dialogue. I got 3 of them. The first one is, so I've got $2,000 in an emergency fund and I owe $2,000 about on my credit card. Should I pay off the credit card or should I save the money and figure out something else?
So pay off the credit card or save the money. So I would probably, looking at cash flow, how much is that credit card payment hurting you on a monthly basis? I would probably try and pay off it to the amount that you can cover. I wouldn't want to deplete your entire, security blanket. I think it's important to have, a little bit of a fund in there. Get that payment of that credit card down below your, level of comfort for a month from a monthly standpoint, and go figure out how to invest in something that would get you the cash that you need to be debt free. Like, credit card debt is terrible debt, so
yeah.
Especially from a long-term standpoint. Short-term is great for points and the benefits, and builders and investors and developers all leverage that stuff,
I got a maxed out card right now.
Yeah.
I got a maxed out card right now. We always joke in our group that we're all broke millionaires.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality.
Property rich, cash poor. Depends on the time of the month.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, because if you deplete the money, if you pay off the 2,000, that's all good and fine, but then you're inevitably, like Murphy's Law, is you're going to have another $1,000 emergency come up, and where's that money going to come from?
Correct.
The credit card.
Yeah.
And the principle that Josh is talking about that we haven't talked a lot about, but I think is a really important one, is pay yourself first. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of, even though it's just $1,000 or $2,000, the idea of figuring out how to deploy that money into an investment or some sort of vehicle that allows you to create more money, let the bank scream a little bit, make your payments, but I wouldn't liquidate in that scenario. I'd find a way to flip something. I'd get creative. Like, I'd put that money to work, pay myself first, because if I pay myself first, not only am I going to develop a new income stream, but I'm going to be able to pay off that debt and keep my capital. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
But also go with your stress, right? If it's like, if that $2,000 is like keeping you up at night, like, that's not worth it either.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts. All right. Number 2, I'm a 1099 contractor and a lot of my pay is under the table. How can I get into real estate or even buy my first home if I can't get a loan?
Well, there's ways to do it.
There are ways to do it.
There are ways to do it. We talk about creative financing. I think seller finance is a really nice way. If you're able to save up cash for down payment, sellers do like to have some skin in the game.
Yep.
So a lot of times you could, be 1099. Let's say you're a painter or a contractor or subcontractor of some sort, or you've got a gig economy kind of, deal, save up your $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, or $100,000, whatever it is, over a period of time. And you can find deals like that with sellers willing to, they need to get out of the property. They're okay holding it.
Yeah.
So, it's really hard. I've been a contractor my whole life, like 1099, or had a self-employed LLC for my entire life. So I had to, tax my corporation as an S corp, pay myself a salary, do that for several years to show consistent salary plus dividends in my business that were escalating and not de-escalating for a bank to trust to give me a home loan. It's hard to do conventional if you're self-employed. It just is.
Yeah.
Banks love you. Some love you if you're employed by someone that could fire you tomorrow. Then if they see 5 years of track record of you having gross receipts. But the other thing is they see you're depreciating things, you're trying to write off stuff because you're playing the game that is meant to be played so that you can create jobs. So if you're self-employed, you might be also having employees, you might have other people under you. So it's just hard in the conventional sense. So doing creative financing to get into your first home, if you're self-employed, is kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. You got to find those deals, find a family member, find something, there's usually some way. The other way is you could co-sign with somebody.
Sure.
There's ways that, what was the part of the other part of the question?
How can I get into real estate or even buy my first house if I can't get a loan?
If you can't get a loan, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that this pays under the table. So, I mean, I agree. I mean, the short answer is that there's a lot of ways to do it. You've got to get creative. There is an ethical answer here that goes like, you probably shouldn't be being paid under the table. Yeah. Right.
I didn't touch on that, but yes.
Yeah. So like, I get it though. Like we've all been there. You and I have probably paid people under the table from time to time, like it happens. But like just as an ongoing place, like that is part of the pay to play, right? Like you've got to grow out of the need to just avoid taxes into the ability to not have taxes be the problem.
You got to look 5 years out.
Yeah.
So you look 5 years out. Right now you're getting paid under the table. Turn your, 1099 into a sole prop or an LLC, preferably. Have that LLC be taxed as an S corp.
Yep.
Pay yourself, build that thing up, build that business, and look out and say, hey, in 5 years I actually want to buy a house. In 3 years I want to buy a house.
Yeah.
And start doing things legit. Pay taxes. Sucks. Live below your means. Pay taxes, and you're gonna have it. You're gonna be able to buy a house.
Well, and learn that. Yeah, and learn ways to lawfully avoid taxes.
Yeah,
because a lot of those lawful means of avoiding taxes, you can actually, if you get the right lender, they can add them back.
The depreciation
being one of them, salaries being one of them. Yeah. So there's some things you can do. The other piece of it, and I'll just tell a small story, is just really getting good at the creative finance piece. Yeah. I just did a deal in Mary Lake. We're about to close on it, and the short version is this person got into a bad situation. They bought another house with their house in escrow. The buyer, the day of closing, the buyer's bank found out that he falsified the loan application, and so they canceled his loan. Of course, their house fell out. This was June of last year, so we all know what happened. June, July, August, the market tipped. They got to the point where they just couldn't sell it. They got 2 mortgage payments. Long story short, they're desperate. The bank's calling them every day. They're getting behind on payments. They can't figure it out. They put a renter in there. They got in touch with me through one of my marketing channels, and I couldn't buy it cash. They owed $360 on it. The most I could have been into it as a cash deal was $320.
Right.
And so that's where most of these conversations stop. Well, with the creative finance piece, I said, hey, what if we worked out something more creative? You've got a loan on this thing at $360,000 at 3%. I'll buy the house. I'll catch up your mortgage. I'll buy the house subject to that existing mortgage. I'll pay all the closing costs, and I'll give you $10,000 cash to walk away. So the house is worth $500. It's just they don't have time to
Did their loan allow you to assume it?
So I didn't assume it. Okay. I bought it subject to.
Nice.
So this is a whole topic, and we should do an episode on it.
Yeah, and I've heard the other property guys talk about this. It's quite interesting.
It's becoming very popularized, and I think it's because we've got a small window. Because in the next 5 years or so, all of the 2, 3, 4% interest loans are going to get recycled one way or another, and so we've got this interesting window where because to me the value of the property isn't always in price; it's in use. So they had already put a renter in there at $3,000. Their mortgage payment's $1,900. I paid them $10,000 in cash and $9,000 to catch up their mortgage payment. I'm into the deal $20,000, and I've got $1,000 a month in positive cash flow. Right. I didn't need my cash. I didn't need a ton of cash. I didn't need my credentials, and I didn't need my credit. Right. That mortgage stayed in their name. Right. And so these are creative examples.
What do you think think that property's worth?
It's probably worth right now 475 to 500.
Right.
They could have sold it, but the problem is they didn't have the time to wait.
So looking at that, so you're in it at 360.
Well, so I'm in it like 380 after I pay the fees, and I'm in it debt wise 360.
Okay. So good. You got 20% equity.
Got 20% equity. But here's the crazy part. I probably could have paid 450 for the property if that's really what was necessary to get it done, because the $3,000 renter is paying all of the $1,900 expenses.
Right.
So, because my best and highest use of that property is cash flow and not necessarily a flip. So I'm going to hold this thing as long as necessary. And I know everybody's going to talk about due on sale clause and all these different things. There are solutions for all of these problems that can arise. You just have to know how to structure the deals. And so that would be my answer.
Cool.
The last question, companies offering a 401k match up to 3%. She says, I assume that I should be contributing at least that much, but is it better to contribute more towards my 401k or use those funds for other types of investments? So I think the question is, I'm going to max out my 3% because I get a match, right? That's free money. I think we would agree on that. But what should I do if I want to contribute more than 3%? Do I put it in my 401k? Do I do something else with it?
I like self-directed IRA.
Ooh, why?
Well, you can invest in real estate developments.
You could invest in Joshua Johnson's next development with self-directed.
I've seen there's a lot of flexibility. You pay yourself back. So if you're a good investor yourself, utilize the tax benefits of an IRA and the ability to max that out, and then use that to invest and bet on yourself rather than the market. So I like betting on myself.
Yeah.
In the end, I think, Joe Montana, they just asked Joe Montana, would he take Tom Brady or himself in a Super Bowl, and he said I'd take himself. Joe Montana said I'd take me, which is crazy. You got 7-3 versus 4-0.
Yep.
Joe Montana just believes a lot in himself. And I regardless, I think you believe in yourself. I think those are the bets I would feel more comfortable with if I had to go above and beyond the 401k match and like doing something extra.
Yeah. So just to break that down, you can transfer, you can actually roll 401k or existing traditional IRAs into what's called a self-directed IRA, and you can use those funds. There's specific rules and things you've got to follow through a custodian, but you can roll those funds into real estate deals and invest directly in hard real estate assets instead of the stock market, mutual funds, whatever. But what you can also do if you don't, maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I don't believe in my ability to invest in real estate, right? Well, there's two guys you're listening to right now that would be happy to talk to you about their next deal where you can become a partner, an equity partner, a private lender through your retirement funds, where you can get like set returns on that money by investing with people who you do trust and believe in. And so that's, there's the only rules is that your direct bloodline and family can't be a benefactor of the profit, right? So you can't do it for a relative. I actually just found that out recently. And there are some kind of workaround rules you have to follow if you're doing things like fix and flips. So there has to be like a separate entity who's actually doing the construction, and the profit of that is rolling up to a separate entity. But then when it all gets liquidated, it rolls back up to the IRA. So that's one thought. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the 401k beyond the free money. I'm not. All right, a couple of fun questions, and we're going to close out. These just quick rapid fires. What's the most amount of money you've ever made in a year? You can pass if you don't want to answer it.
I'm going to call that a front porch converstion with friends, which I would do with you, but not on air.
Would you tell me the least amount you've ever made?
Yeah. Probably like Starbucks years. We're talking sub 20,000 a year.
Okay. A poverty line.
Yeah. And I was married.
Wow. That's another story for another day.
Yeah. I got good health care though. So
that's good. And I think they do like pretty good stock share, capital share options, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
Best and worst investment you've made so far?
Best and worst investment. Probably the best investment was the downtown, 7,000 square foot lot that I turned into 4 townhomes, rooftop decks, all that. I told you that was called the House of Roses project. Worst investment was probably the house that we bought for $32,000 in a bad neighborhood.
In the crack den?
Yes. and then we had to rent out for 7 years. So
I would
there's
say
always
that
a
you
way
missed
out.
out. I would say that you missed out on a side hustle there, though. But that's another, you know.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. Oh man. So yeah, that was probably the worst investment.
All right. If you could start all over again, what would you do different in business or financial life?
Man, as much as I love my, tech background and what I learned from that, I wish I'd have gotten real estate sooner.
Okay.
I wish I'd have gone all in on real estate in my 20s.
Yeah.
And started learning under someone, working under a builder, doing that and investing in deals sooner.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think I agree. I had a great career in banking, but I think that I'd be far wealthier today if I would have spent that energy in real estate.
I just know how much I've learned in 7-8 years, and if I could have doubled that, I mean, gosh, I just love it.
Yeah.
It's just more me.
It's crazy. All right. Agree or disagree. This is where we'll end. No context. You don't get to explain yourself. You just got to agree or disagree.
Okay.
It's the best. And you can't pass. That's what I
love it.
That's,
All right.
that's the deal. All
Here we
right.
go.
The markets are going to crash. We got 2008 all over again.
No. Disagree.
Retirement accounts are a scam led by the government.
Agree.
Oh, shoot. I did not expect that. All right. Cash is king.
Agree.
Okay. Dave Ramsey is your spirit animal and or spiritual father.
Disagree. Which isn't those two answers are interesting, but we're not explaining.
We're not. Yeah. Well, all of my audience knows how I feel about Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is the D word on this show. Your house is not an asset, meaning the house you live in.
Disagree.
The hardest part about real estate investing, we talked about this actually, so we know where you stand. But the hardest part about real estate investing is getting the money.
Disagree.
Real estate is the best asset class or investment vehicle.
Agree.
I thought you might. All right, guys, thank you so much. Joshua, this was fun. Would you do it again?
Absolutely.
More importantly, could I bait you into getting on? So we've launched, and this is a little commercial that I'd like to run as well. We launched an online private Facebook group to talk about all things money. So I want to break off shame. I want to tell people that they're not, they're bad financial decisions. Although they're the decisions they made, they were informed by what they knew, not what they didn't know. And we want to break all the shame off those conversations and help people answer questions about money. Obviously, you and I are real estate guys, so we're going to talk about real estate, but it's beyond that. And could I bait you into coming and doing one of our calls on a Zoom call to just do Q&A and talk to people about all things money?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right. I'm glad. I was going to be nervous you were going to say no after this, but thank you, Joshua. I hope you'll come back. I hope we can continue to have conversations. We didn't even get to talk about your political campaign. We didn't get to talk about self-storage. We didn't get to talk about your next venture.
Looks like we got the next show.
Well, it looks like we got the next show, but stay tuned and we will see you next time.